The hospital lights were too bright. White, sterile, blinding. Yet all anyone could see was the man lying on the operating table, his chest barely rising, monitors screaming out alarms that echoed like funeral bells. "Flatline," a nurse shouted. "We're losing him." The room turned into chaos. Surgeons barked orders. Paddles slammed against his chest. Electricity jolted through the body of Adrian Steele, the CEO of Steele Enterprises, a man who had commanded empires, broken rivals, and built a fortune from nothing. Now, he was nothing more than a pale figure fading into the abyss.
No pulse.
Again, the defibrillator cracked against his ribs, but the monitor only answered with a single, merciless tone. Outside the glass, board members and investors paced like vultures. Phones buzzed with rumors spreading across the city. The great Adrian Steele is dying. The empire is collapsing. In the farthest corner of the waiting hall, someone else sat frozen, not in Armani suits or polished heels, but in torn jeans, mud-stained sneakers, and a threadbare hoodie. Elena. She hadn't meant to be here. She hadn't meant to stumble into the hospital that night, desperate for shelter from the rain. But fate had a cruel way of pushing her where she didn't belong. She clutched the straps of her battered backpack, watching strangers whisper and cry, realizing too late she had walked into the storm of another man's downfall. "Prepare to declare time of death," one of the surgeons muttered inside the operating room. Elena's heart thudded. She didn't know him, this man they were fighting to save, but something about the sight of a life slipping away so mercilessly made her chest ache. It reminded her of nights on the street, when she had watched friends go cold under thin blankets, unnoticed by the world. "Please," she whispered to herself, not sure who she was begging, God, fate, or the man himself. The doors burst open. A frantic assistant, face streaked with sweat, cried out, "He needs blood." "Oh, negative, we're out of stock." Gasps filled the hallway. No one moved. No one matched the rare type. Elena's body jolted. "Oh, negative." The words sliced through her. She knew her blood type. She had learned it the hard way, years ago, during an accident that had nearly killed her. She'd carried the memory like a curse, because no one ever needed her until now. She stood, legs trembling. Her voice cracked as she forced the words out. I'm O negative." The assistant turned, stunned.
"What?
"Are you sure?" "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes. Test me. Take whatever you need." For a heartbeat, the world seemed to freeze. The assistant studied her, this ragged girl who looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Then, without hesitation, he grabbed her wrist. "Come with me." Inside the operating room, Elena's world blurred under the sterile lights. Machines beeped, surgeons shouted, and somewhere in the chaos, her sleeve was rolled up. A sharp sting. The tube filled with her blood, crimson and unstoppable, flowing toward the man everyone else had already given up on. Her mind spun. What am I doing? But then she looked at him. Adrian Steele, the titan of the city. His lips were blue, his body lifeless. And in that fragile moment, stripped of power and fortune, he looked human.
Broken.
Alone. Her chest tightened. "I know that feeling." Transfusion started, a doctor barked. Wait, pulses climbing, heart rhythm returning. Gasps echoed in the room. The monitor, once flat, began to stutter. Then, with a sudden leap, it surged back into rhythm. "He's stabilizing." Cheers and sighs filled the air, but Elena barely heard them. Her vision blurred, her strength draining into the tubes, into him. She clutched the edge of the chair, dizzy, her body shaking. One of the doctors glanced at her, astonished. "Who is she?" No one knew. No one answered. But as Adrian Steele's chest began to rise again, steady and strong, Elena felt a strange connection coil deep in her bones. She had given him blood, but something more had passed between them. Something unseen. The world around her dimmed, but before darkness claimed her, her gaze lingered on him, this man she had never met, yet somehow, fate had tied to her in the most impossible way. And in the silence that followed, One thought echoed through her fading consciousness. What if saving him changes everything? The antiseptic tang of the hospital stung Elena's nostrils as she sat on the cold metal bench outside the ICU. Her hoodie was soaked through, sleeves dark with blood, his blood, her blood. The lines between the two blurred now. Every time she blinked, she saw it again. The frantic doctors, the beeping machines flatlining, the way they'd stared at her as though she were insane when she'd shouted, "Take mine, take my blood now." Her chest heaved. She should have run. That's what she was used to doing. Run when they chased her out of subway stations, run when hunger clawed at her ribs, run when pity turned into disgust on strangers' faces. But something about him had anchored her. Maybe it was the way his skin had turned ashen, the way the air itself seemed to grieve for him. Mississippi. The voice snapped her from her spiraling thoughts. A nurse stood before her, eyes wide, as though unsure whether to thank or scold her. "He's stable," the nurse said finally, after a long pause. "Your blood, it was a perfect match. You saved his life." The words landed like thunder. Her breath hitched. Saved his life? She wanted to laugh because what right did a girl with no home, no family, no name anyone cared to remember have to the title of savior? Before she could answer, polished footsteps echoed down the corridor. A group of men in sharp suits stormed in, their faces a storm of panic and authority. At their center was an older man with steel-gray hair and eyes like cold iron, Mr. Harold, the CEO's most trusted aide. "Where is he?" Harold's voice boomed, cutting through the air like a whip. The nurse pointed toward the ICU, but Harold's gaze snagged on Elena. His nostrils flared at her disheveled hair, dirt-stained sneakers, and bloodied hoodie. "You," he barked. "What are you doing here?" Elena's throat tightened. She wanted to shrink, but something inside her, something that had carried her through hunger and nights in the cold, lifted her chin. "I gave him blood," she said simply. Her voice cracked, but the truth held. Harold's expression darkened, unreadable. For a long moment, he stared as though trying to decide whether she was a miracle or a threat. Finally, he muttered, "Follow me." Inside the ICU, the world hushed to the rhythm of steady beeps. He lay there, Alexander Veyron, the billionaire CEO, the man newspapers called untouchable, cold, ruthless. His face was pale, but alive now, each breath a fragile promise. Elena's knees trembled as she drew closer, every instinct screaming she didn't belong in this glass-walled world of machines and millionaires. And yet, her blood ran through his veins now. Whether she liked it or not, she was part of him. She whispered under her breath, words not meant for anyone to hear. "Don't waste it. Live." But he stirred. His fingers twitched against the sheets, his lips parting as though the fragments of her voice had dragged him from darkness. Then his eyes opened.
Sharp. Gray.
Like steel forged in fire. His gaze locked on her with startling clarity. "Who?" His voice was hoarse, raw, but commanding even in weakness. "Who are you?" The room froze. Nurses exchanged glances, Harold stiffened, but Elena's throat went dry. She wasn't supposed to be here when he woke. She was nobody. She should lie, vanish, disappear back into the shadows. But she couldn't move. His eyes, piercing, searching, held her still. "I'm no one," she whispered, almost ashamed. Something flickered in his gaze, confusion, disbelief, maybe even anger. No one doesn't bleed for a stranger. Elena's chest tightened. She had no answer, no defense. Because he was right. Before she could speak again, Harold stepped forward, his voice firm, protective. "Sir, you need rest. Don't waste strength on this girl." But Alexander didn't look away. His gaze burned into her, heavy, consuming, as though etching her into his memory. "I want her name," he rasped. Elena's heart hammered. Her lips parted, but nothing came. She hadn't spoken her real name to anyone in months, because names were anchors and anchors dragged you down. Yet under the weight of his stare, the truth slipped out like a secret she'd kept too long. "Elena." His breath shuddered. His eyes closed again, but not before a single word left his lips. rough and final. Elena. Harold grabbed her arm the moment Alexander drifted back into unconsciousness, his grip like iron. Listen to me, girl, he hissed in her ear. You may think you've done something noble, but don't mistake it for belonging. This world, his world, is not for you. Elena yanked her arm free, fire sparking in her chest. I didn't ask for his world. I just didn't want him to die. But even as she said it, a dangerous truth burned at the edges of her mind. She was already entangled. The man who shouldn't have survived now carried her blood inside him. And the way he looked at her, like she wasn't invisible, like she wasn't nothing, it terrified her more than any hunger or cold ever had. Because it meant she couldn't run. Not anymore. And outside the ICU, beyond the sterile walls, the city buzzed with rumors already leaking through cracks, the cold CO Levs. But who was the mysterious girl who saved him? Elena didn't know yet. But she felt the storm gathering, and she was standing dead. The first sound Adrian heard when consciousness clawed him back from the abyss was not the steady beep of machines, nor the sterile murmur of doctors. It was her voice. Low, trembling, raw with exhaustion. Please just breathe. Don't leave. Not when I... The words broke, as if she had no right to finish them. His eyelids felt like stone, but he forced them open. Blurred light stabbed his vision, shapes swimming before him. A hospital ceiling. The faint smell of antiseptic. And then her. Maya. The girl who shouldn't have been here. The one whose warm blood still pulsed through his veins. The reason his heart had not stilled. Her face was pale, lips chapped, eyes shadowed with fatigue. But the moment she realized he was awake, they lit with such fierce relief that it stole his breath. You're alive, she whispered, a smile trembling on her lips.
Alive.
Because of her. The thought burned through his fog. This homeless girl, dragged in from the streets, had done what the finest doctors, the most expensive treatments, had failed to do.
But why?
Why would she save a man like him? Why? His voice cracked, rough as gravel. Why did you? Maya blinked, startled. Because you were dying. He let out a ragged laugh that turned into a cough. People don't give blood for strangers. Her gaze hardened, though her voice stayed soft. Strangers or not, I couldn't just watch you fade. No one deserves to die alone. Her words hit him deeper than he expected, brushing against wounds he had buried for years. Alone. Yes, that had always been his curse. Surrounded by wealth, power, people who bowed at his feet, and yet, utterly, brutally alone. And this girl, with nothing but worn shoes and a fragile body, had given him more than anyone else ever had. The door burst open before he could speak. Dr. Lang, flanked by assistants, strode in, relief breaking his usual icy professionalism. Mr. Blackwell, you're awake. Thank God. Maya immediately stepped back, her small presence swallowed by the crowd of staff. She looked suddenly out of place, clutching her worn coat tighter, as if reminding herself she didn't belong in this pristine, sterile world. Adrian's chest clenched at the sight. The doctors fussed over him, checking vitals, murmuring about miracles, calling his recovery impossible. Adrian only half heard them. His gaze sought her out, anchored to the fragile figure by the wall, as if afraid she might vanish. And then came the words that cut deeper than any scalpel. She's not family, a nurse whispered. Why is she still here? Maya flinched, and Adrian saw the subtle way she shrank, as if used to being cast aside, unseen, unworthy. Before she could slip out, his voice rang hoarse, but commanding. She stays. The room fell silent. Every doctor, every nurse froze at the steel in his tone. Adrian turned his gaze to them, icy and unyielding, the same voice he used in boardrooms when sealing billion-dollar deals. If she leaves, so do all of you. Understand? Maya's eyes widened, her lips parting in shock. The staff exchanged nervous glances before Dr. Lang cleared his throat. Of course, sir. As you wish. They filed out, leaving the two of them in a silence that hummed with unspoken words. Maya finally dared to speak. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. His eyes locked on hers, dark and piercing. You gave me your blood, Maya. Do you understand what that means? My heart beats because of you. My life belongs to you now. Her breath caught, her hand tightening on her coat. I didn't save you to be owed anything. I know. His voice softened, stripped of its usual armor. But that's what makes it unbearable. Everyone around me has always wanted something: money, power, influence. But you gave without asking. That terrifies me. Tears stung her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. She had spent years being invisible, overlooked, dismissed. And now, this man, the untouchable CEO, was looking at her as if she mattered more than anyone else. Don't be afraid of me, she whispered. Adrian closed his eyes, exhaustion dragging at him again. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of what you've done to me. Her heart twisted at his words. He was breaking, right before her, in ways no one else could see. The world knew him as invincible, ruthless, unshakable. But here, in this room, she saw him stripped bare, a man clinging to life, haunted by loneliness, tethered to her by blood. She sat by his bedside, her fingers hovering near his hand, but not daring to touch. His breath slowed, drifting into uneasy sleep. Maya leaned closer, her voice trembling but firm. Then don't fight it. You're not alone anymore. Her words hung in the air like a promise, unheard by him but etched into the room, binding them together. And yet, as her eyes flickered to the window, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. The glint of a camera lens from the opposite building sent a chill down her spine. This miracle, this bond, they weren't safe. Not yet. The rain lashed against the hospital windows like an unrelenting drum, each drop echoing the storm that had settled between them. Adrian's breathing was still shallow, his body not yet fully recovered, but his eyes, those sharp, storm-gray eyes, were restless. He had been awake for less than a day, and already, danger pressed in on him from every shadow. Maya, he rasped, his voice low but urgent. You saw it too, didn't you? That camera lens in the window. She froze, clutching the hem of her threadbare coat tighter. I thought I imagined it. You didn't. His gaze hardened. Someone's watching, which means they know about you. Her stomach twisted. She wasn't supposed to be here, in his world of power and glass towers. She was a nobody, a girl from the streets who slept under bridges and begged for scraps. But now, the most powerful man in the city was alive because of her. Why would anyone care about me? She whispered. Because you're the reason I'm still breathing, Adrian said, each word deliberate, heavy with meaning. And, in my world, that makes you the most dangerous person alive. Silence thickened, filled only by the faint beeping of the machines. She could feel the weight of his words pressing on her chest, stealing her breath. Dangerous? She was nothing. No money, no family, no place. Yet somehow, she had become the key to the survival of a man who controlled empires. Then I should leave, she said quickly, the words tumbling out like a shield. I don't belong here. If I stay, I'll only put you in more danger. No. The sharpness of his voice startled even him. He closed his eyes, reining in the surge of emotion. When he spoke again, his tone was quieter, but no less firm. If you leave, they'll find you. And I won't be there to protect you. Her throat tightened. Protect her? Nobody had ever said those words to her before. She had spent years surviving alone, invisible to the world. The idea of someone like Adrian Blackwell, untouchable, untamed, offering her protection felt like stepping into a dream she had no right to claim. But why? She asked, her voice trembling. Why would you risk yourself for me? His gaze locked onto hers, raw and unguarded. Because I can't stop thinking about the moment I opened my eyes and saw you. Maya, you didn't just give me your blood. You gave me back my life. Do you understand what that means? You're part of me now. Her heart lurched painfully. She wanted to believe him, wanted to let his words wrap around her like warmth in the endless cold of her life. But she knew what happened to people who believed in things too beautiful. They were broken, destroyed. She stepped back, shaking her head. I can't. I can't be part of this world. I don't fit. The sound of the door slamming open cut off her words. Two men in dark suits entered, their presence instantly suffocating the room. Adrian's jaw tightened, his body instinctively tensing despite his weakness. "Mr. Blackwell," one of them said with a slick smile that didn't reach his eyes. "The board sends their regards. They're relieved to hear of your recovery. Though I must say, we're curious about your miraculous survival." His gaze flicked to Maya like a knife. Adrian's voice turned cold as steel. "Get out." But the man didn't move. He leaned forward, lowering his voice as though sharing a secret. "Word travels fast in the city. And rumor has it was a medicine that saved you. It was her." Maya's blood ran cold. The man smirked, his eyes glittering with malice. "Imagine what your enemies would pay to know that the great Adrian Blackwell, untouchable, unbreakable, owes his life to a homeless girl. Imagine what they'd do to her." Adrian's hands curled into fists, his voice sharp with command. "If you value your careers, you'll leave. Now." The suits exchanged a look, then reluctantly retreated, though not without one last, lingering glance at Maya. When the door shut behind them, silence fell like a shroud. Maya's hands trembled as she whispered, "They'll come after me." Adrian reached for her hand, his grip weak but steady. "Then let them try. They'll learn what happens when someone touches what's mine." Her heart skipped, torn between fear and something far more dangerous, hope. His words were a vow, a claim, a promise she didn't dare believe in. But outside the storm raged, and in the distance, shadows gathered. Enemies who had already failed to kill Adrian once would not hesitate to strike again. And now, she was caught in the crossfire. For the first time in years, Maya had something to lose. And for the first time in his life, Adrian had found someone he couldn't bear to let go. The storm outside thundered, shaking the glass. Neither of them noticed the unmarked car parked across the street, its tinted windows concealing a camera trained on the hospital room. Someone was already watching, and they had no intention of letting the girl who saved the CEO walk away alive. The night had grown unnervingly still, as if the storm outside had exhausted itself only to pass its fury into the walls of Adrian Blackwell's penthouse. Maya stood in front of the wide glass windows, her reflection trembling against the glittering skyline. For hours, she had felt it, eyes on her, the weight of unseen threats pressing closer. Every sound seemed too sharp, every silence too deep. She wasn't meant to be here. This wasn't her world of cold nights under bridges and cardboard roofs. This was marble floors, glass walls, and shadows thick with secrets. "You're restless." His voice carried from behind her. Adrian leaned against the doorway, his tailored black shirt open at the throat, pale from his recovery but burning with an intensity that stole the air from the room. "I don't belong here," she whispered, her fingers tightening on the glass. "You belong," he said simply, "whether you believe it or not." She turned to face him, anger sparking through her fear. "Do I? They look at me like I'm dirt. The board, your people, everyone knows I don't fit in your perfect empire. And now, because of me, you're in even more danger." Adrian's jaw flexed. "You think you're the reason?" He strode closer, his presence filling the space like fire in dry air. "I've been a target since the day I inherited this company. My enemies don't need a reason to come for me. They already have one. Power. Money. Control." Her chest tightened. "Then why keep me here? Why risk more?" "Because," he said, his voice dropping to something raw, "I can't watch you walk out that door. Not after you gave me back my life." The silence between them quivered, fragile and charged. She searched his face for a lie, but all she found was truth, dangerous and terrifying in its clarity. Before she could speak, the sound of shattering glass split the air. The window behind her exploded inward, shards scattering like a rain of knives. Adrian lunged forward, tackling her to the ground as a bullet whizzed past, embedding itself in the far wall. "Down," he barked, shielding her with his body as alarms screamed to life. Her heart pounded against his chest, the world spinning in chaos, sirens blaring, bodyguards storming into the room, shouting into radios. Adrian pulled her up, gripping her wrist. Move! They ran through the penthouse, glass crunching under their feet. Guards swarmed, forming a wall of bodies as another shot rang out from the darkness beyond the broken window. Secure the perimeter, one shouted. Maya stumbled, nearly falling, but Adrian's arm locked around her waist, keeping her close. His body was still healing, but his grip was iron. They burst into the safe room, a steel fortress hidden behind a sliding panel. The door slammed shut, muting the chaos outside. Maya collapsed against the cold wall, shaking, her breath ragged. They were aiming for me. Adrian crouched in front of her, his hands firm on her shoulders.
No. They were aiming for me.
Don't you dare carry that weight. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. But if I hadn't been here, then I'd still be dead, he cut in fiercely. His gaze burned into hers, unyielding. Don't you see? You're not the reason I'm hunted. You're the reason I'm standing. For a moment, the safe room was silent except for their breathing. His words wrapped around her like armor, but fear still coiled tight inside her chest. Adrian, her voice broke. I'm scared. He brushed a trembling strand of hair from her face, his touch lingering.
So am I.
Not of them. Of losing you. Her heart stopped. She searched his face, expecting arrogance, manipulation, anything but the raw honesty staring back at her. Adrian, she whispered again, but the words dissolved when his hand slipped to the back of her neck, pulling her closer, slowly, as if giving her time to push him away. But she didn't. She couldn't. The distance between them shattered, like the glass behind them. His lips claimed hers with desperate intensity, fierce and unrelenting, as though every beat of his heart had been waiting for this moment. She melted into him, the fear, the chaos, the world outside dissolving until there was only the fire between them. His kiss was not gentle, it was a vow, a demand, a plea for something neither of them dared to name. When they finally broke apart, both trembling, he pressed his forehead to hers. You're not leaving me, Maya.
Not now.
Not ever. Before she could respond, a knock reverberated against the steel door. Sir, a guard's muffled voice called. We have the shooter, and you'll want to see who sent him. Adrian's eyes darkened, his arm tightening protectively around her. Because whatever waited beyond that door wasn't just another attack. It was betrayal. And it was closer than either of them had imagined. The safe room door slid open with a metallic hiss. Adrian stepped out first, shielding Maya behind him. His body was still recovering, but his presence was iron, unbreakable. In the center of the penthouse, guards stood in a tense circle around a man on his knees, wrists bound, blood trickling from a split lip. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Recognition flared. Nathan. Maya froze. She knew that name. Nathan Hale, the CEO's right hand, his most trusted advisor. The man laughed, bitter and broken. You should have stayed dead, Adrian. The company would have been better off. Adrian's jaw clenched. You betrayed me. No, Nathan sneered. I saved us. You were too blind to see how vulnerable you'd become.
Weak.
Obsessed with your empire, with your power. And now this. His gaze snapped to Maya, sharp and cruel. A stray off the streets? You've gone insane. Maya flinched at his words, but Adrian's hand found hers, grounding her. Careful, Adrian said, his voice a quiet blade. The only mistake I made was trusting you. Nathan's smile turned feral. And the board will thank me when you're gone. They already know about her. They know she's the reason you're alive. They won't let a nobody hold the leash of Adrian Blackwell. The words struck deep, heavier than any bullet. Maya's throat tightened. She wanted to scream that she wasn't holding him, that she didn't belong here, that she hadn't asked for this. But Adrian's grip only tightened, anchoring her to him. You don't get to decide my fate, Adrian said coldly. His eyes never wavered. And you sure as hell don't get to decide hers. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. Then Adrian gave a sharp nod. The guards dragged Nathan away, his shouts echoing against the marble walls. When the room finally emptied, Maya pulled back, her chest heaving. "He's right," she whispered. Adrian turned, his expression darkening. "Don't. I don't belong in your world," she said, her voice cracking. "They'll never accept me. They'll always see me as the girl who doesn't fit. And you," she swallowed hard. "You'll lose everything if you hold on to me." For a heartbeat, his silence was unbearable. Then Adrian stepped closer, his hand lifting to tilt her chin until her eyes met his. His voice was low, fierce, trembling with emotion. "Maya, listen to me. I've spent my life surrounded by sharks, by people who smile while sharpening knives for my back. Do you know what it felt like, waking up and seeing you first? A stranger with nothing to gain. Someone who bled for me without asking for anything in return." His throat worked. "You are the only thing in my world that's real." Her vision blurred with tears she had fought for years to bury. "Adrian, I don't care if they whisper, if they hate, if they scheme. Let them. Because for the first time, I have something worth fighting for." His words shattered the last of her resistance. She collapsed into his arms, the sob she'd held breaking free against his chest. His embrace was fierce, desperate, as if he'd never let her go. Outside, the city lights burned bright against the night sky, blind to the storm of hearts in the tower above. When she finally pulled back, her voice was raw but steady. "Then we fight together." Adrian's eyes softened, the steel of a CEO mask giving way to something far more human. "Together." He kissed her again, slower this time, a promise sealed in the hush of the city. But as they stood there, wrapped in each other, neither noticed the phone left behind on the marble floor. Its red light blinked silently. Recording. And somewhere, far from the penthouse, another set of eyes watched the footage, already planning the next strike. The war for Adrian Blackwell's empire was only beginning. And Maya, the girl who had nothing, was about to become the most powerful weapon of all.